I think we can start now. Well, good afternoon. Welcome to this fifth panel of this long day. Thank you for being here. Today we have two speakers, Irati Jiménez and Eider Gomez. And well, if this is okay with you, first of all, we're going to listen to both of your presentations, and then we'll leave some time for the Q&A, okay? Mm-hmm. Good. So our first speaker is Irati Jiménez, who finished her studies in translation and interpreting, and she has specialized in English literature and culture during her master's degree, and more precisely in the representation of animals in literature, with her dissertation and her participation in different conferences. And at the moment, she has just started her PhD at the University of the Basque Country, where she will have the opportunity to keep on with her research in animal studies and literature. And her presentation today is titled "The Figure of the Bear in the American Literary West, from Ancestor to Political Symbol." So the floor is yours now.
Okay, press here. Okay. Yeah, do you hear me well? Yeah, okay. So thank you for your presentation. I'm really happy to be here. To be honest, this is probably the second Congress I've been to, but the first time face-to-face, so this is really, really exciting. So yeah, I'm going to speak about bears. My research basically, I speak about bears in North America, so I cover like many different times and periods, and obviously I also speak about the West. And here, obviously, for this presentation, I decided to focus on that part. And basically, my objective with this presentation is to show how the depiction of the bear has evolved through time, from ancestor, as I say in the title, to nowadays a more political symbol, as I will explain later. But also, one of my main objectives with this is to see how all these representations, even though we have this evolution and animal rights movement, is still really human-centered. Basically, we don't get to know the animals. We represent them all the time, but we don't get to know them truly. So my objective is to see if there is a possibility of representing them breaking from these human-centeredness. Saying that, this is the structure of my presentation I'm going to follow. First, obviously, I'm going to start with an introduction. I'm going to explain a little bit about the bear's portrayal. Basically, it's a little bit what I have just explained, but I'm going to also justify why I've chose the bear. Also, I'm going to show you a little bit of how Native American culture and obviously literature represented the bear, because it's really important for everything I'm going to explain later in the analysis. Then I'll move on to my analysis. I'm going to explain which analysis I've chosen to use in my research and why. And then obviously conclusions are bibliography that is really extensive, I have to say, because we have to read loads to do this. We start with the introduction, the bear's portrayal. So in my research, I realized that many animals were represented in a human way. But the bear really struck me a lot. Why? Because basically, I realized that the bear, animal worship was all around the world, but the bear was common for many different cultures all throughout history and all around the world. Why the bear was so important for these cultures? The main reason, as I will explain later, is basically the similarities we have regarding our body. Because a bear can look as a person, if you think about it, with different movements, for instance. So that many thought that it was like an ancestor, like a father, we are going to say. And many cultures call it that way. The bear was our father. But as time has gone by and society has immersed itself in capitalism, technological advances, the bear has moved on to become not only this secret being from the beginning, but also like a human ancestor that reconnects us to this natural past that we have already lost because of all this evolution I'm speaking about. So we see this evolution, and the bear has become in literature a symbol of these natural roots. However, as I have said before, one of the key aspects of this study is that this respect towards the bear in these literary works does not reconnect us to wildlife, but rather constitute more proof of human sentiment, the traditional opposition between culture, embodying modernity and evolution, and obviously nature. So in other words, all these stories perpetuate the notion of non-human animals as creatures that are solely meant to serve human purposes. So that said, now I'm going to focus on, as I was saying, in Native American culture and literature, analyzing a great number of literary works, tales, mainly Native American tales. I mean, there are a great number of tales where bears appear. So it was really, really interesting to see that. And I read loads, not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them. And I could see like some things in common, even though they were like from different areas in the West and North. It was like everywhere they followed more or less the same pattern. So I noticed that they could be divided, this representation of the bear, and this conception of the bear could be divided in three groups. The first one would be the bear as an ancestor. What I'm saying, this is the origins, we are going to call it that way. And basically Native Americans constantly looked for similarities between animals and people. Why that? Because for them, animals were so sacred because they were there on earth before them. In fact, we have this quote from this book, The Spiritual Legacy of the American Indian. Animals were created before human beings, so that in their anteriority and divine origin, they have a certain proximity to the Great Spirit. Contact with or from the Great Spirit comes almost exclusively through visions involving animals or other natural forms. So basically, they were connected to these animals, and obviously the bear, because they thought that this way they were closer to this divinity. And obviously, in the case of the bear, we see the resemblance they have physically. For example, a bear, when he wants, and I'm going to say he because I'm trying to not use it for non-human animals, he or she wants to get some berries from a tree, stands up like a human and uses the hands. So they saw that and they were like, we are similar. We can be the same person, the same soul. So for that, I have this example of a tale, The Girl Who Married the Bear by the Yukon. And in this tale, basically, they tell us the story about a girl that was taken by a bear and they got married. By the way, marriage between bears and humans was all around on tales in Native Americans. And basically, the bear became the girl's family. And the family, the former family of the girl, ended up killing the bear out of revenge. But the girl was so horrified by it because she didn't feel part of that family, original family anymore. Her family was the bear. So she also took revenge on it and killed her own family for it. So this is an example of this union with the bear, of these, I am part of, we are each like, we need to be like one thing, a family together. And then we also have this other representation that was really common, the bear as helper. So basically, Native Americans tended to give each animal sort of, we're going to say, a source of wisdom. So, for example, in the case of the bear, they thought that they knew the secrets of the plants. And we see many bears that were represented as that, as doctors that helped humans, which is also anthropocentric perspective, by the way. And they gave their knowledge to people, only to people that were worth it, by the way. So we have, for example, this tale, The Medicine Grizzly Bear with the Pahene. And in this tale, basically what happens is that a boy receives this knowledge to cure people from a bear. And after the bear's death, the bear is still doesn't abandon the boy, and they create this kind of a spiritual guidance. So we have this bear as helper and also sort of parenthood parental figure too. And then finally, obviously, even though the bear was really admired, as we can see, that also can mean that can become a threat. If we see a creature that is so powerful, obviously we are going to be scared of it too, because we are like, you can hurt me if I don't do something well. So they also represented the bear in that way. But mainly, this is really interesting, all these tales were about women. So it's this character that was called she-bear. So basically they were scared of women during their menstruation of becoming a bear, basically. They thought that they were going to become beasts. And because of that, they had these rituals. Obviously, I'm generalizing. This was not like for all tribes in all like around Native America, but some tribes took these girls and took them to the forest, and they waited until the menstruation stopped because they thought that they were going to become bears and they were going to make all the other women become bears and monsters, basically. And we have this tale that is the bear woman with the snapping vagina by the Yavapai that actually tells us this exact story, what I've just said. Basically, we have this female bear that starts creating and changing all these female women into bears, and it's a catastrophe, basically. And then, these are the traditional portrayals of the bear, but now I defend that there is a turn, the bears as political. Just going a little bit farther from Native American culture, this would be, for example, the polar bear with climate change, yeah, right? Or, for example, the Paddington bear with all these what is being British topic, yeah, right? Immigration issues. But in this case, in the case of Native American culture, I believe that is more about the bears becoming a symbol of nature. Because with all these topic of the West, obviously involves destroying lots of nature and obviously being really away from it. So the bear has become that symbol of what we have lost and that we want to get back. Okay, so now we come to the structure of my analysis. In my dissertation for my master's degree, I analyzed 4 different works, and I decided to use these analyses to carry out. Basically, I considered many different ways, but I thought that this one was more appropriate. Basically, I analyzed all like the 2 main problems that we find as humans to understand non-human animals, and basically how we portray those problems, how we can detect them. One of them would be human exceptionalism. So basically, creating this binary opposition between culture and nature that I've mentioned before, and representing culture obviously as the desirable one, has led the human race to separate itself from nature up to a point that we have forgotten our origins. So, but this craving for imposing culture superiority and importance as the only way through which the human race is able to achieve this wholeness is precisely what makes them incomplete, making us forget about our own origins. And we are like trying to realize about that. And now we are using animals, and in this case the bear, to come back to this. And then also the unawareness of non-human animals through nature, these are connected, because since there is human exceptionalism, there is also the unawareness, because we try to anthropomorphize them so much, we forget and we are not aware of how they truly are, the true nature. So I'm going to give you briefly an analysis for this literary work that I've analyzed for my dissertation. Is William Faulkner's short story, The Bear. It was published in the 40s, 1942. It has 3 different versions. The first one, The Bear is Not Important, which could be also analyzed, but I'm not going to focus on that now because I find all the other 2 versions more interesting for this analysis. So, okay. I'm going to start with human exceptionalism. Basically here, I want to focus on the different things I have seen that can be that can gives us clues of this human exceptionalism and how it happens. So the first one would be related to the portrayal of the world. Basically, in human exceptionalism, we create all this because we have a conception of the natural world and a conception of the human world, we are going to call it, maybe. So in the case of Faulkner, in this short story, the portrayal of the world is basically returning to this nature. In this short story, we find a boy that goes with his father and friends to go hunting. They try to hunt a bear that apparently is impossible to hunt. And every year they go to the same place in the middle of nature. They spend weeks to try to hunt this bear. So basically, for them, for these people represented, the natural world would be freedom. Yeah, right? Because they come from the city and they take this time to go to nature and return to the origins and basically hunt. And for many authors, hunting, the process of hunting would be this rejoining with the animal spirit of nature. So all these process and the activity they describe is basically this need, this craving to return to those origins. Then we also have the representation of the bear. So when we talk about human exceptionalism, we need to speak about obviously the representation of the world around us, natural or human, and also our conception, how we represent the animals, in this case the bear. In this case, I see two representations of the bear. One is quite classic, as I'm saying, the bear as kin, as ancestor, okay, and would be, okay. And in here, basically, the bear is always portrayed as a deity. Why? Because it's a creature that can't be hunted. So basically, if it's impossible to hunt, they even, at some point, they even think about their existence. Is there like, truly, is there like these creature exist or not? So it's like a sort of magical thing around these bear. And they say, in fact, he's smart. That's how come he has lived so long, you know? So they highlight the intelligence of the bear, the intelligence, more intelligence than us humans. And then also, I see a little bit of the bear as political here. This literary work was from the 40s. So obviously, in my dissertation, basically I say that this is the moment when it started, all these political symbol meaning, we are going to say, because at that moment, all these animal rights theories were like, they started to arise, basically. So in the bear as political, I see two perspectives, because in the second edition, the boy, a spoiler by the way, I'm sorry if you want to read it, the boy decides to save Old Ben. Old Ben is the bear. And I understand the situation as a need for reconnection with nature. You know, I leave you alone and I will go. I understand I'm not going to do anything, you know? And then the other version would be killing Old Ben in the other version. So this is the symbol, maybe criticism could be understood that way, of the man's destruction of the world. Okay. And then in the second part of the analysis, I analyzed the unawareness of non-human animals' nature. And this one, I always like dividing it into two, basically. The first one would be de-animalizing non-human animals, how we give them human traits. And on the other hand, also animalizing human animals. Why this? Because basically, since we have started to see non-human animals as symbols of this nature that we want to achieve or get again, we start creating characters that go through this process to become an animal. But not as actually an animal, it's just still a symbol of this freedom that we want to achieve, you know? So in the case of de-animalizing non-human animals, I see some points in Faulkner. The first one would be the act of naming the animal. So basically, we need to think about why we name animals. We don't know their own names. Bear is the name that we have created. Is it fair for me to call them that way? So that's something that it's always, at least in my head, and also in some readings I've been doing. So here in this Faulkner, what decides is to give the bear this name, Old Ben. This basically like showing the deity and the importance of this character. And in fact, the fact that this creature has a name is like for the characters like a proof of this powerful creature, the power that this creature has. And they say the tremendous bear had earned itself a name, a definite designation like having like a living man. So it's basically it. And I have to say, really importantly, that some characters of this story don't have a name, and normally they are Native Americans, which is really interesting. Then, also the non-human animal silence, these concepts by Lucie de Blanche, basically these, Lucie what defends is that normally we are used to seeing animals talk in films, movies, everywhere, yeah, right? But we don't see many cultural works that actually portray them the way they are. They are not going to communicate the same way we do. So basically, she defends that these silence that we should respect, and maybe we could try to learn the way they communicate, and we can portray it in literature, for example, too. And in the case of Faulkner, he respects it. Old Ben never speaks, but from my perspective, this respect of the silence of Old Ben is it's more proof of the animal's divine nature. So in the end, from my perspective, it doesn't work in this case, in this context. And then in the case of animalizing human animals, I wanted to include here again hunting, because we see how this group starts to try to hunt these creatures and how they go wild, basically. So from my perspective, it would be a way for them to become animals and show their own animality, because they are animals deep down. They are animals too. Okay, and taking that into account, I have these conclusions. The first one, apparently I only have one. There should be more numbers there for some reason. Okay, so I have more than one conclusion. So the first one would be that literature is another source of exploitation of non-human animals, and that we should do something about it. And I believe that this is the moment where we should analyze all these literary works and see how we can change something, their representation. The second one would be that in order to do that, we need to analyze our human-centeredness and see how we can break free from it. And for that, I say, we should analyze all these works and think, why are we representing this animal this way? Then, in order to do that, also, I believe that it's really important, these new animal rights theories, like, for example, the post-human, all these theories that have arisen now, and that basically give us all the ideas of how to understand all the species. Then, also, from my perspective, there is clearly an evolution of the bear's figure to a political symbol, as I have said, and that here I include literary works showing a different perspective, because Faulkner shows a really traditional conception of this political perspective on the bear, but from my perspective, it starts trying to do something, like, for example, the silence of the bear, respecting that. And maybe we could take that and apply it to contemporary literature or new books that are written in some way. And from my perspective, one of the objectives I have with my research is explore the possibility of these animals' portrayal away from this human exceptionalism. And in order to do that, when I start my PhD in some weeks, I'm going to start analyzing more literary works. These are just some examples. I'm going to cover basically the last 180 years. I don't have it clear yet, depending a little bit of how important these literary works are for my research. But for example, here we have Lord Grizzly, that is also really important for the West. Marion Engel, that also is a Canadian writer, but also includes some information related to immigration and identity with Native America. Then the bear flag, or the bear. This one, the last one, is really interesting because it's science fiction. So I also want to cover like all the genres, and also that my objective with my research is basically take all these literary works and see if they have something new and if I can use it, and create a way to represent animals in a respectful way, so it will involve also creative writing. And that's all. My biography, really extensive, and thank you.
Yes.
I have a question for Irati. You talked about how it seems, or like there were two different versions, how Faulkner treated the bird. So I was wondering, as you mentioned it, if the treatment of Native Americans changes in each of those versions, because you mentioned that they were nameless or something like that.
Yeah, there are some characters that are Native Americans, and okay, I'm going to divide my speech in two. So with the bear, for example, the completely changes basically, because in the first one it's a minor character, he has no name, nothing, and in verses 2 and 3 the bear is super important. It basically is the thing that keeps the plot moving. In the case of the other characters, the main character is Native American. So that's also important to say. And in one of the versions, if I remember it well, it was the second one, the second or the third, but more potentially the second, the boy befriends Native American. I mean, it's not described actually like he is Native American, but you can tell it, like you can guess, you know, from what is happening, and also his situation economically, also the way he has been raised. So you can know about it. And in his case, he does have a name because he's really important for the plot. And in that case, in that version, it's really important because at the end something happens with him and also the bear. I'm not going to tell more, but just in case. And also there are more Native American characters. But they have no name, even though they are part from that group, you know? So yeah, that's kind of interesting. In my head, at first I understood it because the story focuses on the relationship between the boy that starts to hunt as a kind of process of I'm growing up, and the bear. Like there's like this magical sort of connection. So I understood it, but at the same time, I thought that it was really revealing that situation, to be honest. So yeah, it's interesting to analyze that from that part. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And you could say like some kind of relationship between Native Americans and the bear, or?
It could be.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, these short stories have been analyzed a lot. There is lots of works that try to see what the killing of the bear means, for example, you know, but all the time from a metaphorical perspective of the animal, which is what I'm trying to avoid. But yeah, there are lots of works that try to do that. And okay, what was your question? Sorry.
Yeah. No, if you could see what
Yeah.
a kind of different.
Yeah. Yeah, and in some of these literary works that analyze this portrayal of the bear, they connect the bear, the treatment, one of the versions, like the killing of it, as a sort of conquer. You know, we have conquered wilderness, and so the bear would be like a symbol of that too. So yeah, of course, it can be interpreted that way. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I have sort of a question
Yeah.
or something that's in my head. So, yeah, you were talking about killing the bear and conquering it, and you were also talking about the opposition between culture and nature, and how hunting is seen as a way of blending with nature. But if hunting implies killing animals, isn't that blending with nature kind of problematic? And again, exerting that anthropocentrism?
Yeah, of course. Like all these aspects that I analyze are basically from the perspective of a critical perspective. So basically, for us, we use a killing of a bear to symbolize like this, yeah, we have returned to nature and we are this, we are animals too, but that's not necessary. Why do you use another creature to return to nature? Because, you know, so that's basically my point. Like, we use all the like methods that actually are not really clear and they are contradictions, to be fair. Or, for example, literary works that defend non-human animals, but then you animalize them all the time. How are we going to represent them in a good way if you don't experiment other ways? So that's basically my point, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's time, and I think, there's a book presentation and at the Aula Magna, so thank you for these really wonderful presentations, and good luck with your dissertations.
Yeah, thank you.